And the manager just says, "What's going on here?" And this woman said, "She won't let us sit down. We want to go to sit down." And
America knew Carol Burnett as the kindest woman in comedy, someone who never held grudges, but behind the laughter were powerful men she quietly cut off forever. One of them was a Hollywood legend so untouchable she refused to stand in the same room with him ever again, and that was only the beginning. America spent decades believing Carol Burnett was universally loved, the woman who laughed at herself, lifted everyone around her, and never spoke badly about anyone. That image was real, but it wasn't complete, because behind the scenes there were moments that changed how she saw Hollywood forever. Moments when powerful men used their status to embarrass her, shut her out, or take credit for what she built. Carol didn't explode. She didn't retaliate. She did something far quieter and far colder. She remembered, and years later, in her own words, she admitted there were men she never forgave. The first name on that list still catches people off guard. By the early 1970s, Marlon Brando wasn't just famous, he was untouchable. The Godfather had turned him into a living myth, and Hollywood treated him like one. That's what made what happened next so unsettling. One summer night in 1972, Carol Burnett was asleep when her housekeeper woke her up. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. When Carol answered, she heard a slow, amused voice she recognized instantly. "Carol, this is Marlon Brando. I've been watching you." At first, she laughed. Brando was known for pranks, but then the tone shifted. He told her she'd be even better if she loosened up, comparing her to women he'd spent time with. It wasn't praise, it was power, casually exercised. Carol ended the call politely, but she was shaken, and the situation didn't end there. By the next morning, a reporter had already called her publicist, claiming Brando had been speaking about Carol in a late-night conversation. Private words had somehow become public rumor. When Brando was asked about it, he brushed it off with a smirk, saying she'd taken things too seriously, and adding that comedians were sensitive women. That was the moment Carol understood she hadn't been admired, she'd been reduced to a punchline. She later told a friend that what hurt most wasn't the comment itself, but the feeling it triggered, feeling small, something she'd spent her entire life refusing to be. From that day forward, Carol made a quiet rule with her team. If Marlon Brando was in the room, she wouldn't be. She never announced it, she never explained it, she simply removed herself, and she kept that boundary for decades. But Brando wasn't the only legend who learned that kindness didn't mean permission. Cary Grant's name is the one people argue about. The gentleman, the icon, the man Hollywood held up as the definition of class. That's why what happened in 1968 cut so deeply. It took place at a Beverly Hills gala, the kind where everyone smiled for cameras and traded compliments they didn't mean. Carol Burnett had just become America's comedic sweetheart, and Grant was seated at the center table, receiving a Lifetime Achievement honor. When the event ended, Carol walked over to congratulate him, completely unaware of what was coming next. A director nearby tried to be friendly, mentioning Carol's show and how the country couldn't stop laughing. Grant didn't hesitate. Loud enough for several tables to hear, he dismissed her work as nothing more than waving her arms and making faces. The laughter around them froze. Carol stood there stunned, not because he disliked her comedy, but because he chose to say it publicly. As she turned to walk away, thinking it was over, he leaned toward Elizabeth Taylor and delivered the line that sealed everything. He said she wasn't a real actress, just a housewife who got lucky. Carol didn't respond. She never did in moments like that, but the damage was done. Hollywood talked about that night for months, not because of what Grant thought, but because of how deliberately he chose to humiliate her. Later, Carol explained it simply to a friend. She didn't hate him for disagreeing with her comedy. She hated that he used his stature to make her feel small in a room of powerful people. 2 years later, Paramount offered Carol a co-starring role alongside Cary Grant in a musical comedy. Her team told her it was a career-defining opportunity. She refused without hesitation. Every time the idea came up, she repeated the same quiet line. She wouldn't work with with a man who belittled women. Grant never apologized, and Carol never changed her mind. But the next betrayal didn't come from a movie star. It came from someone who controlled the doors of comedy itself.
By 1975, comedy was being split into old and new, and someone had to decide who still mattered. Saturday Night Live launched as the future of television, while Carol Burnett was still dominating ratings on CBS. To most critics, the choice was obvious. If anyone should appear on this new stage, it was Carol. But the invitation never came, and the reason had nothing to do with scheduling. Inside NBC, her name was reportedly brought up during an early planning meeting. The response was immediate and cold. Lorne Michaels shut it down, dismissing Carol as the face of a bygone era. Staffers later recalled him saying her style made the network look outdated, adding that SNL wasn't a place for legacy acts. The remark spread quickly through the building. Within days, it reached Carol herself. She didn't react publicly. She didn't ask for clarification. What cut deep was the implication. Carol had spent her career proving women could lead comedy, not age out of it. And now, without ever meeting her, one of television's most powerful gatekeepers had decided she no longer belonged. Years later, she summed it up quietly. She said she had opened doors her entire life, only to watch one slammed shut behind her. The exclusion didn't end there. As SNL grew, anniversary specials came and went. Her name was floated, then erased. No calls, no invitations. Carol never complained. She simply stepped back and let time pass. Then, decades later, when asked if she regretted never hosting the show, she smiled and delivered a final line. They didn't need her, and she learned she didn't need them either. That was Carol's way of closing a chapter. But the next betrayal wouldn't come from an executive. It would come from someone standing right beside her on set. To the public, Carol Burnett and Harvey Corman were inseparable. Their chemistry felt effortless, like two people who trusted each other completely. Behind the scenes, Carol believed that was true as well, until one afternoon in 1974 quietly rewrote everything she thought she knew. It wasn't during a big argument or a dramatic blow-up. It started with something small, a lighting mistake during rehearsal at Studio 33, the kind of thing that usually earned a shrug and a joke. Instead, Harvey snapped. He threw his script to the floor and lashed out at the crew, barking about incompetence and frustration. Then he said the part that stopped the room cold. He complained about being tired of cleaning up her mistakes. Carol heard every word. He wasn't angry about a light. He was angry about his place. The sentence revealed something she'd never seen before: resentment. The room went silent. Carol walked toward him calmly, asking why he would speak to people that way. Harvey didn't soften. His voice rose, sharp and defensive, and he said he was tired of being second on her show. In that moment, Carol understood what had been building beneath years of laughter. Jealousy, not professional rivalry, something deeper. She didn't argue. She stepped away, locked herself in her dressing room, and cried quietly where no one could see. 3 days later, Harvey returned with an apology, admitting he'd lost sight of why he loved comedy in the first place. Carol accepted it. Forgiveness came easily to her. Trust didn't. She later told Vicki Lawrence that forgiving him didn't repair what broke. The show moved forward. The laughs continued, but the closeness they once shared was gone for good. And as painful as that was, the final betrayal would hurt even more because it came from the man she built her life with.
Joe Hamilton wasn't just a figure in Carol Burnett's life. He was her husband, her producer, and her partner in creating one of television's most beloved shows. The world knew him as her collaborator, someone she trusted completely. But behind closed doors, trust turned into control, and partnership turned into betrayal. The discovery came quietly in 1982 when Carol's lawyer noticed something unusual in corporate paperwork. Joe had registered a new company, Hamilton Productions, and listed under it several spin-offs based on sketches Carol had created. Her character was included, but she wasn't named as a creator or co-owner. When Carol confronted him in their CBS office, expecting confusion or a mistake, he leaned back, folded his arms, and said exactly what he meant. "You're the talent. I'm the brain. I know how to handle business." It wasn't just arrogance. It was a confession. He had been separating his financial future from hers while using her creations as his property. But the personal betrayal cut even deeper. Weeks later, Carol overheard two employees whispering about Joe dining with a younger editor, an affair that had been ongoing for years. It wasn't infidelity alone that hurt. It was the realization that everything she had built while carrying the weight of family and show had been quietly co-opted. The divorce followed shortly after, along with a brutal legal battle
battle for ownership of her work. When Joe died in 1991, Carol didn't attend his funeral. She sent white flowers and a note wishing him peace, but privately she admitted the truth. Some wounds don't heal with time, they only settle. Carol Burnett had made the world laugh for decades, yet these betrayals left marks no audience ever saw, and each one taught her something essential. Kindness doesn't mean weakness, and grace doesn't mean forgetting.
Carol Burnett gave the world laughter, warmth, and unforgettable moments of joy. She made people feel seen, celebrated, and entertained. Yet behind the scenes, she carried wounds most of us could never imagine. From Marlon Brando's casual dismissal to Cary Grant's public humiliation to Lorne Michaels' shutting doors she had spent her life opening to Harvey Corman's jealousy and finally Joe Hamilton's deepest betrayal. Each man left a mark. But there's a lesson in how she handled it all. Carol didn't retaliate with anger or scandal. She didn't scream or beg for recognition. She simply remembered, set boundaries, and preserved her dignity. Grace, she showed, isn't about forgetting. It's about protecting yourself without losing who you are. In the end, Carol Burnett's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about strength, about knowing when to fight, when to walk away, and how to keep your soul intact in a world that can be cruel, careless, and unfair. She laughed for a lifetime, but she also learned to protect the parts of herself that mattered most. And maybe that's the most inspiring part of all. Some wounds don't heal completely, but they can shape a life of quiet power, resilience, and unshakable self-respect.